This is Bontera Bob and BonteraBob.com. He might not look like much, but these super microbes will change the world. And we all can use Bontera to get healthy and rich if you want to become a reseller. But first, did you know that the human body contains approximately 38 trillion microbes? Mostly in our stomach, mouth, and skin. And did you know that 1 teaspoon of soil has billions of microbes? Well, check this out.
Right now, these are living on your body. But don't worry, they're supposed to be there. They're microbes, and the planet is covered in them, and there are tons of them in the soil because they literally make fertilizer for plants.
These are some of the only things on Earth that can do this.
We depend on soil for almost all of the food that we eat. And because 90% of the planet's soil could be degraded by 2050, scientists and even agribusiness think microbes could be key to averting a food crisis. So let's take a journey to the invisible world, right under our noses and our feet.
What if I told you that beneath your feet there's an entire world more complex and essential than the tallest skyscrapers or even the human brain? A world with billions of living creatures in just a teaspoon of soil, creatures that may hold the key to solving some of humanity's biggest problems: climate change, food security, and even human health. And you've probably never even seen them. These invisible engineers are called soil microbes, and they might just be the unsung heroes of life on Earth.
And that's why I said we can all use Bontera to get healthy and wealthy. We're talking about feeding the world organic fruits and vegetables. Okay, well now meet the Sowers. They are organic farmers from Oregon, and these are the Bontera products that they use. We spoke with the Sowers last week and we asked them about their experience using Bontera products for the past 3 years.
The products that we have used have been the SA10, the Del Mar, Trico Power, Nitrofix, and the NT10.
Right.
We have not, the PC10, I think they only released it last year, if I remember correctly. And the seed coat wasn't available when we first started ordering either, that I know of.
Right.
So
Here we see I am sharing the website, and we'll start from the beginning. So Bontera is the organic biological products for sustainable agriculture. And I would love for you to explain to me, and I did have these pictures here, these lovely pictures of you winning the awards at this looks like the county
Fair, yeah.
county store.
yeah, that's behind our 16-pound cabbage that we grew.
Wow. Is that the world's largest?
No, we had a 24-pound cabbage last year.
Wow. And I think we have a picture of the 24-pound, actually. Let me...
It had a lot of the foliage on it, yeah.
Right. I had that. Actually, I have it somewhere. Yeah, there it goes.
There it is. That was a Felderkraut. That's an heirloom cabbage, German cabbage.
Yeah. So it comes up to a point at the top. You can see Robert's hand is actually around the top of the cabbage. That's the pointed top of the cabbage that he has his hand around.
Right.
And then he's holding the base of the cabbage under his arm.
This is in Oregon?
Yes,
Central Oregon.
Central Oregon. Yeah.
Central Oregon.
And we're kind of in the high desert atmosphere. We're about 3,100 feet where we're farming. So it's fairly high altitudes. We have cool nights, warm days, and a fairly short growing season. We have, I want to say about 2,000 growing degree days during the summer, and they're not always consecutive.
Right.
So they can change the actual growing from one year to the next, and what we have to do to protect them from frost.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how long have you been using the Bontera products?
This will be our third season. Yeah. We started 2 years ago, had really good success with it in our pasture format, and that's when we started deciding to add it to our garden as well. We learned about the NT10, the microbial, or the nematode. What was that?
Yeah, the NT10.
And we learned about that because we've had some issues with nematodes in our gardening area for our root crops, and we found it took care of that problem. And I think it did so with just the one dose. I was recommended to do it twice, and we did it 2 times that season, but we saw no damage between the first or second dosing.
Wow.
And it's all through drip irrigation. We're fairly conservative with our water. At the time we started using it, we were in the middle of a drought season. And so we're trying to make the best use of what we had for fertilizer and water. And so we cut back our fertilizer on our pasture by about 50%. And knowing that we were going to have a short watering season, and we applied the products. Basically, we mixed up a large tank, aerated it overnight, about 250 gallons. We added a couple of other components as well to help it grow the product, like some blackjack molasses, and there might be a couple other things we added. We aerated it for 24 hours, and then we transferred it into a sprayer for our four-wheeler and just sprayed it on 15 gallons at a time. It took me time to try it. We do plan to change that this year, as I'm going to actually add it directly to my irrigation system. So I'll actually do a fertigation system directly to my sprinkler system. And so it'll go on wet, and it'll stay wet, and I'm hoping that will help promote the product's life cycle so that it'll actually stay active and not go dormant, waiting for a wet cycle of irrigation. Because when I was spraying it on the field, it's going to dry out, even though we were told that it would stay active in the soil if there's any moisture at all. But here in the high desert, it tends to dry out really fast. So we're not sure how much efficacy there is spraying it and then letting it dry out and then trying to get it wet again. So this year we're going to try adding it directly to the water system.
Now, I know my business partner, Greg, he mentioned he wanted us to discuss the difference. Did you see in using Bontera compared to other products that you were using in the past? Because he says you've been organic farming for many years now, right?
About 5 years. We're on 5 years of basically 6 years ago, we started doing what would be considered organic growing. And we didn't really understand the distinction between just organically growing things using organic fertilizers and those kind of things, and what the difference was between that and actual no-till regenerative farming.
Right.
And that is where we have headed. That's where we headed 5 years ago. So we did 1 year, 6 years ago, just doing organic fertilizers and those kind of things. But we had some struggles in there with some pest control and things like that. And then 5 years ago, we started learning about regenerative farming using micronutrients, using soil inoculants like the Bontera products, and so we experimented with that just in our garden area, and we had not done that on our hayfield yet. That time we tried a few products, but what we found was that it really needs a balanced inoculant that has really good beneficial microbial, bacteria, fungus, all of those beneficial things need to work together. So when we started looking into the Bontera products, it was because one of my clients because we both work full-time jobs outside of our farm. One of my clients told me about the Bontera products, and the only thing he had used was the SA10 and the Del Mar. And he said, you might be interested in this. Anyway, he gave us his phone number. And so one day we sat down and we called him on a Saturday. We called and they kind of expected to just leave a message. And what we got was he answered the phone. And he spent about an hour on the phone with us talking about the different Bontera products that were available and what his recommendation was based on our application. So what we started with was 5 of the products. We started with the SA10, the Del Mar, the Prico Power, the Nitrofix, and the NT10. He specifically said the NT10 would be great for us because we had a nematode problem in our root crops. And so we were really struggling with nematode damage in our carrots and turnips, beets, those kind of products. And we had not been successful in growing cabbages, which is kind of strange considering the pictures that you've been showing, right?
Right.
And that was because we were having a lot of pest damage. So what happened is we took the Bontera products and decided that if we were going to buy all of those products, we did them all together, as Robert said, and we fermented them and grew them in a tank overnight and to make them really multiply before we applied them to the field and to the garden area. And that year, just in our hay yield, we got 6 ton of hay more than Robert had ever gotten off of that field before.
Which is about a 25.
Wow.
Yeah. So we only have 6 acres of hay, of hay field. And so, for us to get 3 ton each cutting more without doing anything else and actually cutting our fertilizer in half that year of what we normally would apply, that was pretty amazing that, we had gotten that much of a yield increase just by simply using the Bontera products. So we knew then that it was working. And then when we started harvesting things that year, like our root crops, the beets and carrots and those things that we were really struggling with a lot, we noticed that we had no damage on any of those. So all the nematode damage went away. And we knew that with only one application to our garden. We also stopped struggling with all of the pest issues that we were struggling with. And so we knew then that the Bontera product was something that we really wanted to stick with, and that it was really working the way that he had told us it would on the phone that day. So we were pretty excited.
Yeah, so to see results that fast. Wow. Do you have any other examples, though, of any other challenges specifically in organic farming that Bontera has helped you overcome?
Yeah. So last year, we started to notice we had planted a few rows of melons in our high tunnel. And we started to notice that we were having some wilt in a couple of the plants. And those plants were not underwatered. So we knew they were getting plenty of water. We knew the irrigation system was working. Everything was fairly young, so it wasn't pretty far advanced, growth-wise, but we weren't sure exactly, but we thought it was verticillium wilt, which is a vascular disease, which causes a plant to look dehydrated even if it's been watered. So it causes the plant to no longer be able to uptake nutrients. So we decided, through some advice that we received from a friend, that we just needed to balance everything that was going on in the soil. So typically, organic farmers would treat verticillium wilt with something like sulfur. and sulfur would be fine, except that what sulfur does is the sulfur goes in and it kills everything indiscriminately, right? So everything it's going to kill isn't just the bad, it's going to kill the good too. And so what our friend said is, you're going to have verticillium wilt in your soil no matter what you do, unless you decide to just kill everything indiscriminately. But what you need to do is balance what's in your soil. So he said, what I would do is reapply your inoculant a couple of times this week and see what happens. So that is what we chose to do. We went ahead and we reapplied all of our Bontera inoculants to the soil to balance out, everything that's working, because all the biologicals work together, right? And it worked. We could have very easily lost both entire rows of our melon plants. And instead, what happened is our melon plants recovered and we lost one. So, and it was the very first plant that was showing the disease. So it was pretty simple for us to replace that one plant, and the plant we put in its place did not die. So we know that by balancing everything in there, and we used specifically the Trico Power, the SA10, it was just the SA10 and the Trico Power. It was specifically those two products. So.
Mm-hmm. And have you noticed any long-term benefits to your farm sustainability, such as improved water retention or reduced soil erosion?
We haven't done any testing for the water retention for the cation exchange, but we typically don't have any problem with soil erosion. Unless we have bare ground, then the wind would blow it away. But no, we have a good standing crop of grass. It's several different varieties of grass, and it's been intact for probably 30 years. It has not been farmed or tilled. We are showing some signs of gophers and voles that are taking over, and we're trying to mitigate that this year. Because the last thing I want to do is have to plow it up and replant it. And that's typically what a lot of people do. Going to try to mitigate those with some other devices, whether it be trapping or killing them off that way, and try to save our stand. But as for water retention, I believe that it has helped, because we do have one area of our pasture that dries out faster than others, and it put up more hay than the wet area.
Okay.
So that's a good sign that it's holding on to the water. So.
Yeah.
And how does Bontera compare in terms of ease of use and cost effectiveness versus the any other organic solutions that you may have tried?
Well, it's probably comparable to using high salt fertilizers, price for what they're asking to put on the property. But our goal is to use less and less as it establishes itself. So if we've got a long-standing
Of the fertilizer.
Yeah, if we've got a long-standing field of grass, then it should sustain itself with less of the Bontera products over time. Initially, we knew it was an investment that's probably equal to what it would cost to put the high salt fertilizers on. The difference is that you have to put those high salt fertilizers on every year and after every cutting. Our goal is to apply the Bontera products maybe once a year, or if we see need to, apply it a second time a year. So we're hoping those results.
And you think over time you wouldn't need to apply it every year?
Oh, no, I think we would need to apply it every year. I think it's just that I don't believe we would have to apply as much.
Gotcha.
Or many varieties of the product, because right now we decided to use all the products to try to overcome several issues at once.
Right.
I don't think you need to overcome all those issues every year once we've created balance in the soil.
Well, and I would like to add that when we started studying inoculants, you can buy so many individual inoculants that will do certain things. What I see in the Bontera products is that they are more complete, as far as you don't really need to buy 15 inoculants, mix them all together, and then put them onto, into your soil, inoculate your soils with that. What I see is a more completeness in each one of the products. So specifically, using the Trico Power, I would like to share a couple of testimonies with just the Trico Power, if I could.
Sure.
Okay. So we had two real issues in one of them in an Italian plum tree that we had last year. So we noticed that in its initial growth, and we had thought we might have seen some disease in it the year before, but we weren't positive. And then in the spring growth, we noticed that as the growth came out, the leaves were curled under and they had those sticky black aphids in there. I don't know what they're officially called, but and so we decided that we were going to inoculate the ground around that tree and spray directly on the foliage the Trico Power mixture. So we decided to treat that, and within a couple of weeks, the rest of the growth that was coming out on that tree was healthy. Didn't have any aphids in it, and the aphids that were there died. That first initial growth didn't repair itself, but that's because it was damaged as it grew. But after that initial growth, and then the secondary leaves that were coming out, they were all normal size. They didn't have any of that curling to them, and we didn't show any more sign of aphids that year. So that actually repaired our tree. It repaired the health of that tree. The other thing was we had a rogue tomato seed. I say that because I think it was actually stuck to a pepper seed. And the way that we start our seeds, it would make sense that happened because it came up in a section of the tray with the pepper seeds themselves.
Right.
And when we saw it, I told Robert, I said, that's a tomato. That's not a pepper. It had 2 little leaves. And I said, that's a tomato. Where did that come from? Because we are pretty careful. We try to be pretty careful. Well, because we are who we are, we decided to let it grow and see what it was. Well, as it started to actually grow and get some of its large leaves on it, you could tell that the seed must have been damaged at some point with chemical, because the leaves curl and they roll almost like a cigar leaf. So you would see this leaf just it was curled so tightly, and the new growth almost looks like rolled cigars or worms. Okay?
Yeah.
And so we planted it knowing that something was wrong with it. And then we inoculated the soil of that tomato plant with the Trico Power. And I will tell you that above that, all of the new growth came out and was normal. Prior to us inoculating the soil for that particular tomato plant, all of our other tomato plants had blooms and tomatoes started on it, but that plant had not yet bloomed. After we inoculated with the Trico Power, the rest of the growth on that tomato was normal, and it actually produced a bumper crop of tomatoes.
Oh, wow.
So they were black. They were not something that we planted. So it was definitely not a seed that went rogue from us, but it was definitely some type of black heirloom variety tomato. So, yeah. But what was amazing is that the plant actually showed so much disease and actual chemical damage sign initially. And then after we inoculated the soils with the Trico Power, it came out of it completely. it's just amazing. I've never seen a plant that damaged actually come out of it and not only grow normally, but produce really well. So,
And that's thanks to the tricho power.
yes.
Wow. Cool. And I wanted to ask you if you can explain to me some of these images here. Like in this image, what are we looking at here?
These are patty pan squash, and they are, one of them is a white variety and the other is called lemon sun or scallop squash. Some people just call them scallop squash.
Okay, gotcha. And how about this?
This is mid-season of our candy sweet onions.
Right. I was gonna say green onions, but yeah. So these are, and here you got some beets.
Mm-hmm.
Pickling cucumbers.
We grow a lot of pickling cucumbers.
This is the 16 pound.
Yeah, that cabbage was 16 pounds after we took all the outer leaves off of it. So in that picture, it's actually sitting on a little bit bigger than an 8-inch plate.
Right.
So, and it makes it look like one of those little 4-inch. And then just some of our slicing cucumbers. All of these images here that we're seeing, these are all from our first year of growing with Bontera. This is all our first year.
Right. So this year should it be third seed?
This year will be third, yes.
Excellent. And I think we had one more question. Okay, so a very important question. Would you recommend Bontera to other organic farmers? And if so, what key benefits would you highlight?
Well, we have already recommended Bontera to other gardeners who are wanting to grow their crops organically. And I think specifically what I would say is there's more than just one key benefit to growing with Bontera. There's more than one key benefit to inoculating your soils properly and knowing that you're keeping your biome happy and allowing all of those things to work together in the soil to release the nutrients that are bound up in an oxidized state in the soil. When we started doing this, we had no idea just how beneficial it would be to start unlocking the nutrients in our soil. I would tell somebody who is growing this way that if they wanted to grow the most regenerative crops, nutrient-dense products, best flavored products, those kind of things. When you start allowing the soil to feed your plants instead of feeding it with an outside product, an outside fertilizer, you are creating a more nutrient-dense, more flavorful product. So like last year, we sold about 100 pounds of tomatoes to a woman. They're called Italian heirloom tomatoes. We haven't seen any of the pictures from this year or last year's crop yet. But this woman came in and she's been canning her whole life. And she bought these tomatoes from us, took them home, canned them, came back a week later, and she said, I want to buy 250 pounds of tomatoes next year from your crop. And I was like, what? And she said, those are the best tasting tomatoes I've ever made sauce from. And she said, I just have to know, I have to tell you that to know that they were grown cleanly without any pesticide, without any herbicide, without any kind of high salt or high petroleum fertilizer. She says, I think that is what makes the difference in the flavor. But if you want to take it one step further, it isn't just the flavor, it's the actual nutrition that's available in the plant. Today, you can buy a regularly organically grown tomato in the grocery store, and it still will not taste like a tomato that is grown using a product that inoculates your soil and makes the biome happy.
Wow. Wow. So it's not just the yield, and the size, and not just the flavor also. So because it seems like it'll also enhance the flavor, but you also get a more nutritious product.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, that's three key benefits right there.
Mm-hmm.
Size, taste, and nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
We've been learning that it's not just taking soil samples and seeing what kind of minerals and elements you have in the soil, because they can give you a false reading. If you take leaf petiole samples and have them tested, it tells you what is or isn't in the soil that your plant can or cannot uptake. So by giving it the proper biome, it helps reduce a lot of those otherwise oxidized minerals and elements in the soil that the plant needs that cannot take up. So if you can make that biome happy, it makes the plant happy, because the plant is symbiotic. We know that because it feeds the biome. And so with the sugars that the biome needs. But establishing a good biome is very important. Something we didn't understand a few years ago that we're really learning now.
Right. Yeah, and I would love for us to have another another interview in the near future. I know Greg mentioned maybe you guys could send us some more recent photos, or maybe even a little video of some of the crops, and any type of content. We're growing the new website. We're building the new website. I'm so used to farming now. I'm saying growing, but we're designing the new website, and we'd love to have you back on for future interviews and updates.
That'd be wonderful.
Okay. Thank you. We would very much enjoy that.